Hey there, welcome to day 39 of our Supersize Your Business Annual Challenge. Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here. And all this week, for the next 7 days, we're going to talk about confidence in action. We're going to begin with a very good place to start, in my humble opinion, of course, decision-making confidence. Let's start out right here. How do you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? Asking yourself the question, how good a decision maker am I? 10, you're an awesome decision maker. You make fast, informed, quick decisions, and they almost always turn out right. Now, I think that's a good affirmation, but in reality, I could never say that I am a 10 with respect to decision making. And I honestly believe that I'm a pretty good decision maker. I'd probably rate myself a 7 because I make decisions and I'm learning still. I'm getting better at, and which is why I'm still a 7. Making decisions, and then when I find out I've made the wrong decision and taken action toward it, I want to find out as quickly as possible if that's the right direction or not, if I'm going down the right road or not. And in our businesses, this is really important because whoever makes decisions better and faster beats out their competition, hands down. And I'm not a big compare yourself to others in competition person, but I know that in some of our businesses and some of the markets that we're in, competition is fierce, and we have to know our competitive advantage. And if we do some of these things, little things, right? Like having more confidence, being a quick decision maker, knowing when to hold them and knowing when to fold them and go back and start over again. We use a lot of processes in my organizations, decision-making processes, decision-making frameworks. We like to have a common language and a common framework that we use for certain types of decision. I do them in my personal life as well as in my businesses because it makes it so that everybody's on the same page and we can make faster, easier decisions. If we have our purpose, our mission, our vision, our principles, our core values all agreed upon and aligned in the beginning as we're forming and doing things, or we create them as soon as we know those are things we should actually have so we have a common language and common understanding, and we make decisions that are in alignment with each other, not just in the best interests of my department or the best interests of your department. Because whenever we get in that, and are considering what is the best thing to do right now with our limited resources, because we all have limited resources until we get more, as a whole, we'll make mistakes, and we'll make bigger mistakes that are harder to reverse and unravel than if we have a common set of values and principles. Once I adopted, hey, I make decisions based on my core values. If it matches my core values, I'll consider it, and it's probably going to be a yes. If it doesn't in any way, shape, or form, it's an automatic no. That idea and that strategy and using that technique in and of itself cut out 90% of the noise and the things that I'm never even going to waste my time and energy on because I know they're not for me or for my businesses. And if you have that in place, it makes you 10 times faster than anybody else in your market or anybody who's trying to get the attention of your ideal clients and customers. So let's think about this. Scale 1 to 10, I would say be brave and put your number in the comments below, and own it. I mean, there were times and there are areas of my life when I'm like a 2 or a 3 or a 1 when it comes to decision making. And there's a big one that came up this morning as I was thinking about this topic and getting ready and saying, okay, what are we going to talk about today? That I have committed to myself that I will have made that decision and implemented it by the end of this week. It's a new week. I consider Sunday the beginning of the week, and I plan my week out. So by the end of this week, I will have made a decision and taken action and implemented that decision because it's way past time I did that. I can think of a couple things like that, but I'm only going to pick one and commit to one. So there's a tool you can use called the 10-10-10. If you're having a hard time making mistakes, and I forgot to cover this in Supersize You, but I will talk about it another day. You ask yourself, when you're struggling to make a decision about something, how will I feel about this decision in 10 minutes? Then, you set a 5-minute timer and you think about this, right? Is it worth 5 minutes to verify that you're making the right decision, or verify that, yeah, you're going to make this decision and take action immediately and see what happens? Or not? I say 5 minutes is definitely worth it, especially if even if it's a medium decision, right? How am I going to feel about this in 10 minutes? How am I going to feel about it in 10 months? How am I going to feel about it in 10 years? And if it's something that in 10 months or 10 years just isn't gonna matter. Just make the decision and take action now. And realize that if you make the wrong decision, you can always change your mind. The only time this is a problem in our businesses is if we're getting locked into long-term contracts or we're partnering up with somebody to supply us something. And I generally do not get involved in things like that without doing my due diligence and a bunch of research. Why? Because I've gotten burned in the past, right? I've gotten burned by taking on the wrong business partner. I've gotten burned by not having all my ducks in a row sometimes. So you can use the 10-10-10 tool and see if that gives you more clarity and more clear thinking in terms of what it is you should or should not do with respect to this decision. The cost of putting off decisions and just not deciding, it's gonna resolve itself. I can't think of anything in my life so far that has not resolved itself, or my business is true, but it won't necessarily resolve itself in our favor. And that's why I think it's critical that we be proactive in our decision making. And again, have a framework, 10-10-10 if that works for you. There's so many more. If you need one, please ask, and I will have a quick chat with you, and I guarantee I can recommend at least a handful. And throughout the course of this year, I will intentionally recommend a handful of decision-making tools and processes and frameworks we can use. For example, we are going to start on the SOAP framework tomorrow. And it's been my favorite decision-making tool since then. Personal improvement, challenge overcoming, goal-getting tool since 2020. Came up with it in 2020 as part of the pandemic and have used it ever since. I think I've taught it every month, at least once a month since its inception. All right. So ask yourself some questions today. Share in the comments below. I want you to think about somebody you know and admire because they're an awesome decision maker, and either tell them or send them a message, a DM today, a direct message. I am overcoming my aversion to DMs, probably because they've been used in such a bad way on me for so long. I got a bad taste in my mouth about them, but it's also a strategy that works when used correctly, just like every other tool. When used correctly, this system, when used correctly, this process, when used correctly. Can't remember who first said that, but it's so true. I don't know if you're journaling. I highly recommend journaling for business owners and keeping track of things and writing ideas and thoughts and things down, and having a book you just have that you carry around with you. And when something pops into your head, you write it down. Some people can do it on their phone. Some of us don't see very well and won't do that, or it just doesn't make sense. But ask yourself some questions today as you're rating yourself too. What decision have I been putting off making? What decision am I not making? And what's the real fear behind that? I know mine. Mine is I'm not making a decision about the absolute direction of my school community and how I want to go. And I use the excuse that I want people to create it with me, which is the absolute truth. But that is not the reason to not pick something and go with it and morph and change along the way. I've already changed my direction probably 3 or 4 times on that. So what is 1 more or 10 more or 100 more iterations until I land on what is right for me and all of the people in the community? Think of a time when you've made a decision that was absolutely positively wrong, but it turned out good, turned out better. I took a job that I didn't know if it was, I thought it was going to be right for me, but it turns out it was wrong for me. I ended up being there 5 years, and it made my skin a lot tougher. Let's just put it that way. I learned a lot there, and I learned a lot about different lessons that I wouldn't have had I not said yes to that. Even though after about a year in, I'm like, this is not the right long-term direction for me and for my career. And then what else is possible? Ask yourself this today. What else is possible if I trust and decide that we are an awesome decision-making organization? We have a saying in my family, we are a problem-solving family. Why? Because every time something comes up in life, just about every day something comes up, and in businesses as well. Are we focused on solutions and being a problem-solving family or business? Or are we focused on things that are keeping us stuck and not making decisions? Love to know your take on that. All right. Any questions? Hit me up. Otherwise, have an awesome day. And I will, of course, be with you tomorrow with another confidence building, all this week action related item. All right. Have a great day. Bye. Oh, slow connection, of course, at the end. Just makes the video